I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk just very briefly about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and the U.S.-Pakistan relationship.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts going forward? Do you see a relatively smooth transition, or are you worried about the resurgence of Taliban and other extremist elements in Afghanistan and in that in the South Asia region?
I'm worried. Everybody who's looked at the situation is worried, because the plan, the withdrawal plan, envisaged that by the end of 2014, the security situation in Afghanistan would be vastly improved over where it was when President Obama announced it, that the Afghanistan security forces and army would be much, much stronger, that the Taliban would be weaker, and that we would have been able to move perhaps towards some kind of negotiated political agreement with elements of the Taliban that wanted to be part of a peaceful settlement. None of that has come to pass so far. And a lot of the worries, in addition to security, you know, an army is an arm of a government. So we've been building the arm, but the body is not there. We have a government that, in the experience of most Afghans, is the enemy itself. Acts corruptly, it acts in its own interest, it acts against, it does not dispense the most minimal levels of justice, and it isn't politically legitimate. So somehow we have to try to see in the coming 2 years if we can help push towards an improvement in the domestic political situation in Afghanistan. At the same time, we have the question of what's happening in Pakistan. I'd say there's some good news in that it does look as though for the very first time in this country's history, a civilian government will finish its elected term in office peacefully and reach elections next spring. That's an important milestone. Historical milestone. It's not asking a lot, you know, for there not to be a military coup or a government overthrown, but it's very important that it's the first time ever. And going with that is a weakening, a relative weakening of the importance of the Pakistani army in creating policy, and a growing recognition that Pakistan's security depends more on its internal security than it does on its obsession with India and its worries about Afghanistan. The growing trade between Pakistan and India and the opening of the borders, visa restrictions and the like, is an enormously positive sign. If it can continue and lead maybe even to resolutions of the territorial disputes between Pakistan and India, then Pakistan will not feel as though it is pinched between an unfriendly government in New Delhi and an unfriendly government in Afghanistan, in Kabul. That in turn could mean a Pakistan that is much less destructive or more productive in its relationship towards Afghanistan and towards a peaceful settlement there. In other words, one that would give less support to Islamist radicals, to Taliban and other groups that want to that are fighting in Afghanistan, and maybe even close down the sanctuaries across the border from which they attack. So I think there are important positive signs in Pakistan right now. We're a long way from seeing success, but it's nice to be able to point to something positive instead of negative.